Hi, and welcome to this episode of Tech Interviews. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you'll realize this is a little bit of a different episode because you get to see my face as well as the face of my guest. So I've been doing Tech Interviews now for, well, I think just over 3 years. And the very first guest I had on was the gentleman that you can see on the other screen. So I thought if I'm going to experiment with making videos, I needed, he might as well be the guinea pig for that as well. So so welcome to the first video version of the Tech Interviews podcast, Michael Cade. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hello, mate. Yeah, all good.
So yeah, so people who've not seen you before, they now get to see you. And for people who've not seen me, this is it. So sorry about that.
Yeah, I was going to apologise as well.
Well, thanks for joining us on the show. And actually, what we're going to be covering is last week. We're recording this on the 26th of June, but last week we had VeeamON, the online version of VeeamON. So we wanted to take a little bit of a look at that and kind of get some of the main key messages that came from it, but also maybe a little look at what the online experience was like from for those who attended. So I can talk about that, and obviously for those who were behind the scenes and putting the event on, and and obviously Michael, you kind of did a bunch of keynote demonstrations that may or may not have been live. It's not for me to give away the magic. But before we do that, as we normally do, just because we're on video, it's no different. And for people who have not heard or seen you before, why don't you give us an introduction, tell us who you are, what it is you do.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Cade. I work at Veeam, obviously, and I sit in our product strategy group, which is headed up by our CTO. So what does product strategy actually mean? It obviously defines, or hopefully defines, where we go as a company or where we go as a product set. So we liaise quite closely with product marketing to keep them honest, and we also liaise with product management, and then we also speak to a lot of our customers, service providers, channel partners about what are we seeing from a data point of view or data management point of view. What are we seeing out there in the field, so that we can feed that back up into product management, and hopefully the two and two meet, and we can build a better product full of features that can help with those issues. That's really what I do day to day, as well as bits around content, speaking on main stage at events if we ever get to go to a main event again in person. But yeah, a lot about content, a load about community. Probably highest up on my list is around the IT community, not just our Veeam Vanguards and looking after them guys from a technical point of view and enabling them, but also just in general, the VMware community, the new communities that are coming around from a cloud native point of view. They're what really interests me as well from my job's point of view.
So it's interesting that you said one of the things you do is you speak from main stages at actual events, and will we ever get back to that? But of course, we had an online event, and you spoke on the main stage there. See, so you don't even need to leave your office. And we can maybe talk about the groups on the desk there, but that's not going to work particularly well for the audio version. So go to the YouTube channel, you can watch the video version and see the strange Groots collection that Mr. Cade keeps. No idea what that's about. I've never asked him. We may find out. So anyway, the theme of the show really was to talk about kind of this idea of running VeeamON. So it's been a physical event I've been fortunate enough to go to. Really enjoyed the physical version, and for me, I actually really enjoyed the online experience as well. So, but then I was just watching and consuming and not having to worry about it. So why don't we talk a little bit about what that online experience was like from a Veeam point of view? It's not the first time that there is kind of a VeeamON kind of Veeam digital event that runs annually anyway. But it's obviously the first time you've taken this main event and run it as an online event for obvious reasons. So kind of what was that experience like? How was that for Veeam? What was running an online version of such a big event like?
So I think you mentioned VeeamON Live, which is generally around October, November at the end of the year, and it's generally it's very much more condensed. You probably have 5-6 key talking points, breakout sessions, etc., where we just cover off what's coming, because we're generally going to be closer to a release cycle at that point. Much less people involved. So I might do 2 breakout sessions. The rest of our team will maybe do 2. We're very much, that's just us in our bubble doing some work there with some architects, etc. VeeamON's obviously a whole new ball game, especially online, because you're now encompassing partners, you're encompassing more people doing the breakout sessions. Like, cannot just be our team. I think there was 20 plus breakout sessions that you could choose from, and then you could go back and repeat those. So all of that logistics, and I'm thankful that my boss does that. Rick does most of that breakout, the technical breakout. So, and I want no part of that, but just a bigger in scale, like, and then in comparison to like the in-person event. So we were going to be in Vegas this year. It was going to be beginning of May, first week in May, and that was going to be probably 80 breakout sessions, but it's a completely different feel to it, because so in person, we'd probably get 3,500 to 5,000 people attending our in-person event. When we look at the live event, the online event, which is free to everyone and still open for another month, so you can still go back and register now and still be able to catch those sessions. But we had close to 30,000 people register, and then there's some ridiculous numbers underneath that as well, around like 8,000 people being on the platform at one point, and just the scale is enormous. And then that brings me back to the worrying, the anxiety prior to an event online. So we're well into this current situation where we're forced to be online rather than in person for a lot of our things and events. But so we've also, by having it in June, we had a few months of seeing other events and seeing how they were. And I think my overall like perspective of online events is that they've been slow to get in. The user experience hasn't necessarily been what it should be. And I think if just a side note, I think there's huge innovations to be had here. I don't think online events are going away anytime soon. And I think we're still using platforms that were designed and created 10 years ago. And I think that's a huge area that could be really, really well put together with a new innovation there. But yeah, so from inside the Veeam house, it was, from my point of view, it was a bit more of a anxious type run up into the event, just because me being the community guy, I want us always to look the best possible us as we can. And the platform is completely out of our hands, really. We can record everything on there, we can be live and stream everything on there, but we're at the mercy of those. Whereas if I'm on stage in Mandalay Bay or MGM, other hotels are available in Las Vegas, but I control the time, I control me speaking. Generally there's obviously microphones, but it's all very easy to sort and fix when you're in that scenario. When you're on a virtual platform, someone else is dealing with that and making sure that there's enough bandwidth and making sure that the quality is good. I think that's a big thing. Is the only thing that I was really disappointed with was actually the quality of the demos that I did. Was they were a bit grainy, and it was just a bit unfortunate. But so I didn't record them like that, so I have got good raw copies, and no doubt they'll be on the Veeam YouTube like sometime soon. But I think that's kind of a behind the scenes look at that run up into. I think on the day I sat through a lot of the sessions. I think they went really well. I think they were really informative. They were technically on point for a large majority of the audience. But probably best to ask you, Paul, what you thought of the online experience from a VeeamON point of view.
Well, I thought there's lots of interesting things you just talked about there, kind of a behind the stage look at it. And I was speaking to one of your colleagues earlier this week. I won't name him, who was kind of sharing some of the challenges that you've kind of touched on there as well. And of course, from an outsider looking in, you just don't know that kind of thing. And I think, but a couple of things that you did say was really interesting. One was the idea that you've seen quite a lot of online events now, because this one was running June, so there's been a whole raft of events that have gone before that. And Veeam have sensibly, I think, like lots of organisations are going to do, and kind of something else you touched on, have learnt from that. And you can see that these online events, and like you say, I don't think they're going to go away. I mean, I don't think we're not going to see in-person events. I think we will probably see those again. You know, Veeam and others, I'm sure, will want to run some kind of online event, but whether that's an in-person event, but whether they'll keep an online kind of stream for that, or some kind of online versions, or maybe run an online event. Because I do think one of the huge values of you know, there's not been acres of real positives that have come out of kind of the last 3.5 months, but I think from an IT job point of view, one of the things that has been beneficial has been the amount of events that have gone online. So rather than people cancelling them, they have turned that into something. And trying to take the positive out of some of these is it gives me an opportunity to attend things. And I'm sure we saw that with VeeamON. People who would have liked to have gone in the past just haven't been able to do that, you know, because VeeamON's normally in the US. So perhaps if you're not in the US, it's difficult. You know, and there's lots of events that people want to go to. So we've seen in this last week the online registration for VMware, VMware's VMworld event at the end of September, you know, and they've done some interesting things with that, including kind of a paid for stream, which will be interesting to see whether people take that up and how that might look. And I think the other thing, and it wasn't something that I thought about, was actually that idea that the platforms that people are using have never, you know, probably like lots of things that we've learned, you know, Microsoft have seen it with Teams. We're recording this on Zoom. Zoom had their own challenges, particularly early on, about the amount of people and the scale that these things are now running at. They've never really thought about it. And actually what we're going to see is a whole bunch of innovation in that space. And I think that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. And I thought there was a couple of things that Veeam did that was smart in terms of what you talked about in keeping like a feel, some kind of feel of an actual event. And I thought one of the things, I've not seen anybody do it so far, and I'm sure other people probably have, was that you could go and visit the Veeam booth in kind of the virtual expo hall and get your Veeam t-shirt. So you just went in and ordered it, and I thought, well, I'll have one of those. It's, you know, we're probably like you, we're living in t-shirts now. So, you know, can't remember, I've got some shirts in an ironing basket somewhere. I don't even know where it is. But, you know, so you think, well, another t-shirt, that's always going to be a good thing. So I think there was loads of things that kind of came from that. I think there's lots of things that Veeam did well. I thought the session numbers was, for me, you know, I thought the kind of 20 or 30 or so sessions was kind of a good number. You could keep track of that and you could pick the ones you wanted to go to. And I think a huge value is that ability to have them on demand for a period afterwards, because it means you don't have to try and hit everything. You pick out the things you want, and I have done, you kind of go back and you look at some of these things. And I did the same with Microsoft Build a couple of weeks ago, kind of gone back and, or which bits interest me. I like to watch the keynotes kind of as they happen, but kind of then go back and look at, well, which bits interest me, and I can kind of go and dig into them and say I've kind of already done that. So so that's an interesting kind of look at the background. But looking at the things that we're talked about and kind of we're announced. So what were some of the key things, maybe for people who've not had that chance to go and watch it yet or didn't attend it at the time? And what were some of the key messages that came out of those kind of main stage events, main stage presentations? What are the kind of things that we should be looking for coming out of VeeamON and coming from Veeam in the near future?
Yeah, so one of on the second day, we ran through a technical general session. So I have to be careful how I pick my words here. But so on the first day, we're obviously going to do a general session. Our CEO, Bill Largent, came on and he discussed the current climate, the current challenges, the challenges that maybe were January, February, bit of March, have kind of gone out the window. They're not completely gone, but now we've got this pandemic. How do we make sure that we were working in this office and now we've got to work from all of remote locations and homes, and how do we make sure that we still protect that data in the same way? But that session was still very much geared towards data and how we protect ourselves or protect our data against malicious activity, but also against the failure scenarios, but also just having that availability of that data. And there was a couple of customers on there that have been through that journey that spoke about it. Jim Kruger, our CMO, he was also on there. Really good, short but sweet type general session. And then the second day, which we do on our in-person events as well. And this is as an IT community guy, a technical or a technologist, is this the technical keynote, I think, is the key to any event, and to only have a keynote and keep it down to a condensed time is key. Like, I've sat in some huge events where we've had a general session that's taken 2-3 hours, and we've started off with the business challenges. We've gone through a little bit of the technical, and then we've gone back to business and a bit of marketing, and you're just in there for 3 hours, and generally I'm probably jet lagged as well, so it just takes the edge off the big announcement. So we've always had this factor of a technical general session where, well, literally wall to wall, it's going to be technical demos and technical conversations and challenges about how we fix things. So to get on to actually what that technical general session was, so first up we had Danny come in, and he, as a CTO, he gave a good forward-looking view from a technology point of view on where the world is going from a data usage point of view, where we're going to store data, why are we going to store data that we need, how long we're going to keep it for, etc. Big emphasis around data reuse. I have to plug that one because that's one of mine in there as well. But so he did a bit of a lay of the land and also a forward-looking view on what the future will hold from a data perspective. Then we kicked into products, and so for those that are familiar with Veeam, we have our Veeam Backup Replication or Veeam Availability Suite, and then over the last few years we've brought in these additional specific tools that allow us to protect other workloads in a much more efficient manner. So first up, I think we spoke about, and now I might get these the wrong way around, but the first one was Veeam Backup for AWS. Now, we released this in December of 2019, and now we're 6 months in, and we're already released version 2. Version 2 brings, well, it's a major release, right? Brings the ability to harmonize your snapshots and backups, be able to store them into S3. It gives you the ability to cross-replicate those EC2 instances to another region or another account. So think about disaster recovery now in the cloud, and loads more other things where I could probably take a whole episode stringing of just talking about that. So I won't do that. I will plug the YouTube video at the end though. Then we spoke about VBO, and so Veeam Backup for Office 365, and we spoke about version 5. So version 4 came out at the beginning of the year. Version 5 already was in the works, in the roadmap. I actually learned about what V5 is going to look like in January at our sales kickoff, which seems such a long time ago. It was actually in person. We saw people, had dinner with people.
What?
And
you did what?
Yeah,
What is this madness?
it's great. The old world. And then so the big takeaway for that was really around Microsoft Teams. And I wish we did have a crystal ball and we could see into the future about how much adoption was going to be and how much more data was going to be residing in Microsoft Teams today as opposed to if COVID wasn't here. But obviously that brings us the ability to, now we could back up Teams before because Teams data is all part of SharePoint anyway, and we could back up SharePoint. But to have that granularity of being able to go in and take out individual items and restore chat functions and files that you're collaborating on, it just seemed a little bit easier to be able to offer that to our customers. So that was VBO version 5, and then finally was
just to jump in. Just jump in. I think what's interesting about that, and actually in both of those, kind of the backup for AWS and VBO, what's a good example of is how quickly the world is changing, and it's important that organizations kind of keep up with that. And our Teams is a great example, isn't it? I think we've seen, and I'm sure I know Veeam are kind of a business that uses Teams as well, like many organizations, and I think we've all seen, and Microsoft were absolutely taken by surprise. I think because somebody had said to me a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's a really interesting point, that Microsoft had developed Teams, but Teams was a solution looking for a problem. And then the world came along and presented a problem, and Teams has kind of fitted really, really well. But it introduced a whole bunch of things that people had never really thought about, including not just the backup of it, because as you said, because most of it lives in SharePoint and a couple of other bits 365, you were protecting it anyway. It's actually recoverability of Teams. And that Teams Explorer obviously was kind of got quite a lot of buzz around it, because I think the ability to, because we talk about this all the time, that although I think the statement, it's all about restore, because without restore, what's the point? And that kind of is true, but without backup, there is no restore either. I think it's always worth remembering. But actually the big part about restore is, how do I make that nice and straightforward? And in something like Teams, which is quite a complex beast behind the scenes, doing something that, and like you said, it was kind of coincidentally. It's not like you saw this coming in January. The work had already been done or was already in place. But again, I suppose it's just a good example of we need to be able to adopt and evolve really, really quickly. And both Veeam Backup for Office 365, Veeam Backup for AWS, is showing that kind of evolution. And what companies like Veeam need to be able to do is this rapid cadence of getting solutions out of the door, and we see that with other vendors that I see day to day. You're seeing their cloud data services businesses are churning out updates all the time, because actually the world of cloud continues to evolve rapidly, and actually events like the ones that we're living through right now, give the opportunity for people who use cloud a lot to say there's a value of operating in the cloud, but we need the infrastructure and things that sit around that. So anyway, I stopped you mid-flow there, but I thought it's kind of an interesting point you was making.
Yeah, no, all good. The other things around VBO that I don't think we even shouted about because we probably didn't have enough time was, so VBO it's required to be installed. It's a very small install that is put onto a Windows box, and then obviously protects Office 365, but can also protect on-premises Exchange and SharePoint using the same tool set. Another two things though they came out before VeeamON, but we didn't really talk about it too much, is the ability to deploy kind of a marketplace template to be able to spin them up in AWS and Azure. And so Azure was there a few weeks back, but I think that's an interesting topic as well, is that, so being able to store everything in Azure that came from Office 365 is great, and that's one step. And given the fact that version 4 gave us the ability to back up directly to object storage as well, including Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, but also AWS S3 or any S3 compatible storage, the ability to actually spin up the VBO deployment in AWS from an AWS marketplace AMI type provisioning. Now you're taking the data and you're backing up across multiple clouds. I think that offers and then you could put that to AWS, or you've got the option there to really cater whatever choice you want. But I thought that was really interesting, and that's kind of there today and already available, as well as some stuff around security and modern authentication about being able to actually get to that data. So that was VBO. And then the final thing of that first section, before we get on to where I was involved, was around VAO. So Veeam Availability Orchestrator is a version, it will be a version 3 product with the next release, or this upcoming release. So what VAO is, from an orchestration point of view, is, to begin with, it was about being able to take a replica of your virtual machines in VMware over to a secondary site, or from multiple sites into a disaster recovery site. We would orchestrate that, all the failover plans, all of the testing against that using Veeam Data Labs, being able to verify that, that replica will work, that disaster recovery plan will work, dynamically document this, and provide you with a nice orchestration method of getting workloads from here to there if the worst, or if a failure scenario was to happen. Then version 2 came out, and that was about being able to leverage those backups for a similar task, about being able to move those backups and orchestrate those backups to wherever you need them as well, for disaster recovery, business continuity. And then this final version is, and this is taking a similar stance to how we went from a Veeam backup and replication point of view. So obviously backup and replication came first, but then the ability to leverage storage snapshots and not only storage snapshots, but also replicate those storage snapshots using the storage technology underneath to replicate that data over to that secondary site. So exclusively in version 3, it's about being able to integrate into NetApp and ONTAP in particular, and leverage their snapshot engine and their SnapMirror, SnapVault over to that secondary location for disaster recovery. So that was the big announcement, and Melissa did 3 fantastic demos on what these look like. And again, like I say, the quality wasn't brilliant, but we do have better quality demos that we'll share at some point on the Veeam YouTube, I imagine.
I mean, I think for anybody as well who looks at, and I think we all do, and again, one of the things we've probably learned over the last 3.5 months is the importance of being able to test and develop business continuity strategies, something that allows us to be up and running quickly in another environment if we need to be. And we talked about this before we started recording, that Veeam Availability Orchestrator is one of those kind of solutions that is a very well kept secret, and that's never a good thing. If you're a technology company who sell things, as Veeam do, it's not a great thing to have secret products that nobody knows about. And I think it's definitely well worth, if you've already registered for VeeamON, you can go back and watch the sessions, either watch that main session. I don't know whether Melissa did. I guess she did. She did, didn't she? She did a separate Veeam Availability Orchestrator session as well. I think they're well worth having a look at if you can find them.
Yeah, definitely. And where it sits in the platform, that orchestration engine about being able to move data from A to B, it uses a lot of the Veeam underpinning technology that we have in Veeam backup replication, but it adds so much more as well. It adds a lot of dynamic documentation. It adds a lot more things that wouldn't necessarily be involved with disaster recovery from a Veeam backup replication point of view. It allows you to pull in other areas of your business that need orchestrating if the worst was to happen and you had to fail over. And I think that's quite the interesting part of VAO.
So you've been waiting for ages now to talk about the things that you did. So why don't you tell us kind of about your main stage sessions, which again you're covering some quite important evolutions for Veeam and some of the things they're doing. And I think you did some of the stuff around maybe forthcoming attractions as well.
So very fortunately, I got given the task of being able to demo what's coming in V11 from a Veeam backup replication point of view. So Anton began by giving the theory as to why and what we're doing, and then I got to show that, this is how we're going to approach that. So first up was CDP. Now CDP, we stood on stage in New Orleans at VeeamON 2017, and we highlighted this was a project where we were looking into with some intent to deliver. This is where we're going to use the VMware IO filter, the VAIO filter, to be able to capture IO and split that IO between the two sites. So it gives you a really, really fast recovery point objectives, but also recovery time as well, because we're down to seconds, not minutes or hours. So that was the first demo. I'll let you watch the demo as to what I use. So I generally speaking, for these demos, and this is a bit of an insider, is that I generally get around 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes tops to be able to come up with a demo that can fit into that. Now, I could go away and I could go into Camtasia and I could play around with time for a recorded or for a online session, but on a main stage that just doesn't happen. I want everything to be live because we obviously believe in our products as well, so everything should be live in our opinion, even with pre-alpha, pre-built beta at least builds. So I had 5 minutes to ultimately set up, because I wanted to show the simplicity of setting up a CDP policy. I needed that to quickly get sent over to that secondary site. I then wanted to show you what that workload was and update it with a very small file because, I haven't got time to send a big one. And I need to get that over to that secondary site as fast as possible and then perform a failover. All of that in, I'm pretty sure it was 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Not that I did it a few times, but I'm pretty sure it was that. So I used, and I'll let you find out what the VM was that I used.
It's fair to say cutting edge technology was involved.
Yeah, and I'll say it again here. I did say it on the demo, but we're not condoning using this particular operating system anymore. But we do know that apparently there is still people out there using this. So that was the first demo. The second demo was really about what we're doing around cloud storage or object storage. And so it was the enhancements around being able to add Google Cloud Storage to our capacity tier. So already today we've got that long list of AWS S3, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, IBM Cloud, NES3 compatible storage. We're now adding Google Cloud Storage just because, and I don't know if you're hearing the same, Paul, but this is an ongoing, I'm I'm hearing a lot more about Google Cloud at the moment. I'm hearing a lot about Azure. I'm hearing a lot about Google, and they seem to be coming more into that enterprise, more into that infrastructure world. But maybe that's another. Maybe you should get someone from Google on, Paul.
I think one yes, they're more than welcome, of course. But I think what it does say is, and I think the vendors who are taking this kind of who are taking public cloud seriously, I think what it does say is that you've got to take all of them seriously. You've got to give customers, and one of the things I really took away from VeeamON was how data focused the conversation was. The whole if you think about even things like we were just talking about before, talking about VAO, the ability to orchestrate business continuity and disaster recovery into any kind of location, take away a lot of those headaches. What that really is doing is focusing on the applications and the data. It's focusing on the outcome that we want. And I thought that was interesting how much of VeeamON was about that. And actually just that example there is talking about what we're taking away from the customers. The customer's concern is, or do I need to place it in a particular cloud? Does it need to be on a particular piece of hardware? Do I need to buy an appliance? Now, what we're saying is, or what Veeam is saying at least, is that you can put that data anywhere that you want, anywhere that's relevant and right for you, and we will make sure we can orchestrate, protect, move it around, give it portability. We can do all of those things, and the reason I said before that we are, as opposed to Veeam, because it's a conversation that I have with people all the time, that it's important that as you build strategy going forward, that there has to be a focus on the data and the outcome. We can't be tying ourselves to location and hardware types. We've got to look at, where do we want that data? How do we want to move it around? Where do we possibly need it? And what kind of flexibility do we want in the future? So I think that's actually, again, it's just another good example of people who are taking this stuff seriously, making sure that they're hitting all the potential places that their customers can go, and making sure that they can offer services within there. So anyway, so there you go. So you was right there. That was the point.
Yeah. So, and then as a continuation to that object storage, cloud storage, we also heard from customers around, well, we need to, so we're fully using the copy mode and the move mode functions of our scale out backup repository and capacity tier. But now we need to be even more cost efficient. Like, as we get out of a certain time span of 90 days or more in that, let's say, AWS S3, I need that to drip down into even cheaper archival type storage. That, I think Anton used the term write once, read never, because hopefully you never have to go to it, but we need to keep it because that's what regulations or compliance says. So we made another tier as part of our scale out backup repository. So if you think, we've got our performance tier, which is where we're going to keep our really fast recovery. We've got our capacity tier, which is where we're going to keep a copy of data or a long-term retention of that data moved and tiered into it. And then we're going to have an archive copy, which is for really long-term retention that hopefully we never have to touch, but by law, regulation, compliance, we have to keep it. So that archive tier will give you the ability to send data to a cheaper storage. So things like deep archive within AWS. So that was what the demo was. And then also, there's a bit of focus around that, and I didn't get a chance to really touch on it, was as soon as data does go into that deep archive type or S3 Glacier type scenario, if you try and pull, like, it might be cheap. It's cheap per gig, or like it's the cheapest possible storage that AWS have. But also, how to get it out then becomes a recovery time issue, but also a cost issue, because it's going to cost you more to extract that data. So our engineering guys have really thought about, well, instead of bringing that data directly back to on-premises, let's bring it back to our AWS 3 bucket first, our capacity tier first. And we're also going to be able to say, okay, what are the SLAs in terms of being able to get this data back? Do we need it as fast as possible, like a medium term, or do we need it as slow as it needs, but let's bring it back? And all of them will have their own different cost factor as well. So we've thought about that recovery process and not just gone, oh yeah, we need to bring all that data back, because that will cost an absolute fortune from an egress point of view. And then the final two demos were really focused around instant recovery. So one of the things that we've kind of been known for is around instant VM recovery, bringing back a virtual machine or a group of virtual machines back as fast as possible. Like we're talking seconds, and that could be from your storage snapshots, your backups, your replicas, etc. But instantly, we're bringing that data back up and running as fast as possible. So obviously, in version 10, we announced and released the NAS backup functionality. So the first demo that I did was around the instant recovery for NAS, and what that enables us to do is provide a read-only copy of our NAS backup to our users, or to a group of users, or whoever you need to have access to that data, just so that they've got a good copy of that data, whilst the IT team is remediating whatever that failure scenario is. I use ransomware. If we were in Vegas, I wanted to use a drill to go through like simulate a failure. It would have been very Vegas for that, but in my office, it wouldn't have come off as well. Plus, it would have been my NAS, and that would have cost me money. So that was the first demo of that, and it is seconds again. So I had to split these two into that time frame. So I only had 2 minutes each for these demos. So I had to show something really quick. And then the final one is around instant database recovery. So, and today already in the product, we have the ability to do publish. So what we mean by publish is we can take the backup, we could take the SQL or Oracle backup, and we can publish a database from that backup to another SQL or Oracle system. Ideal for test and development. We're presenting the database from the backup storage, but it's a short term fix, or it's a short term use case for test and development, and then you make your changes locally. The backups are not being changed, but you're using that data to do some development against. Then once you're finished, you drop that and it goes back away, and things carry on. What we wanted to do was the ability to actually instantly recover that SQL database or databases back to the production SQL box, which as far as I'm aware, this is new. This is the real innovation of Veeam, is being able to publish that or present that back to your production SQL box or Oracle box and have that database back up and running. And then what we're going to do in the background is, so we're going to move the bulk of the data over, and then when we need to do that switch over, you've got the option as to when we do that. And that switch over is an outage, but it's now seconds rather than having to wait for everything to come back. And if you think about, and maybe this is another hidden thing that we don't talk about enough, is if you think about storage vMotion or just like vMotion within VMware, about moving data over, they send the blocks over, but then they do it live now. But if you think back in the day, or if you're going across site prior to having the ability to do this across multiple vCenters, you would have to power it down to then bring it back up. And so Veeam developed something called Veeam Quick Migration. So, and this is still in the product today. If you don't have the vMotion license or the storage vMotion license, then we will use Veeam Quick Migration to simulate that same process as storage vMotion. We use exactly the same engine for the instant database recovery as well, to move that data back into production storage. We also use it in the CDP. If you look back at that demo, we use exactly the same process to fail back with our CDP. And I'm pretty sure there's other areas in the product that use the same Veeam Quick Migration to migrate data around freely. And that was it. I only did 4 demos, Paul.
So, well, you've it seemed like a busy day, and I think, I think what's interesting about the whole thing, and certainly what stuck out for me was this kind of idea around, and Veeam talked about, didn't they, the idea of the kind of the tagline for it was around this kind of cloud data management piece, and and I think. I know before the event I made a comment on Twitter that I think was relevant, and you can look at I think people can, genuinely ask the question, whether you look at Veeam and your first thought is they are a cloud data management company. And I think that's a valid question. People perhaps still look at Veeam and say, well, it's a backup and recovery company or whatever, and actually what the things, but for me, I think all the things that you've spoken about today, even if Veeam are not a cloud data management company, I think Veeam are doing all of the kind of things that I look for when I'm starting to look at building data platforms. So when I'm looking at what are the things that I need a data platform to be able to do, or certainly my view, what do I think myself and my customers need their data platforms to be able to do to deliver an appropriate data platform for their enterprise going forward. And whether you look at Veeam as a cloud data management company or not, I think all of the things that you've talked about are all the component parts that you're looking to deliver in that. You want portability of data, you want to orchestrate things, you want to be able to have things available and available quickly, like kind of you talked about there with the instant recovery around NAS and databases. So for me, I thought I took quite a lot of that from VeeamON. And to go back to where you started, I think actually as an online event, it seemed to be delivered really well, and I kind of enjoyed it. And I think for people listening to this show as well, they have the opportunity to go back and kind of listen and look at that stuff themselves. So, well, look, I think we've put people through enough of seeing me and you on a video. I think they perhaps don't need to see any more. And for those listening, I think there's been loads of really valuable stuff there. So Michael, actually, just as we wrap up, so if people do want to find out any more, where can they still find VeeamON? And obviously, if they want to hunt you down on the internet and now they've seen your face, maybe in the street, what's the best way of going about doing that? Not the street view, obviously. I'm not advocating.
Yeah, well, as long as they socially distance, then I'm fine with that. So anyway, finding stuff on VeeamON, I think VeeamON.com, and if that isn't taken, then someone needs to buy that and sell that to Veeam. But I'm pretty sure it's VeeamON.com. If not, Veeam.com will have links to it. From my point of view, if you need to get hold of me or want to get hold of and have a chat, then I'm on Twitter at MichaelCade1. Also do a bit of blogging at Veezilla.co.uk, and I've been doing some of these some of those demos that I showed at VeeamON. I've been trying my luck at YouTube and trying to put some content out there. I think it's a lot easier, especially given that we're stuck at home all day. Let's watch and listen to someone talk about something that's hopefully interesting. So on YouTube as well. Again, it's Michael Cade 1 on there. I think if you search for that, you'll find that. But generally, anything Veeam is on there.
Okay, well, Michael, thanks as always for coming on the show, a regular guest and a regular supporter of what we're trying to do at Tech Interviews. So thanks for coming on. And if people want to watch me do these kind of things again with guests, so you can kind of see how it goes, and hopefully you notice I make notes and things as we're talking. I don't just not listen and kind of make this stuff up as I go along. Well, I do make it up as I go along. That's a different conversation. We will potentially do more of these, depending how well it works and stuff. We've used Zoom to do this, so Zoom comes with its own challenges as good a platform as it is. But anyway, for now, Michael, thanks for being on the show as always, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, everyone.
So I hope you enjoyed that, and you hope you enjoyed the first video version of the Tech Interviews podcast. Whether we'll do more of these, we will kind of find out over time. If people like them and want to kind of consume podcasts via YouTube with video and audio, then we'll keep making them. It'll be a little bit about whether we can find an appropriate platform. Zoom, as good a platform as it is for collaboration and sharing, does come with its own kind of technical challenges when you're after the right kind of audio and video quality. But we shall see how it goes. And say if you want to kind of capture shows that way in the future, then just let me know. I'll make sure that future episodes of Tech Interviews, certainly for the time being, appear on YouTube as well, even if it's just audio versions. And of course, it will appear in all the normal places. And anyways, I normally end the show, of course. If you want show notes for this episode, you'll find them over on techstringy.com, or you'll also find a library of all of the previous Tech Interviews podcast episodes. And if you've got an idea for a show or would like to appear as a guest, then why not just drop me an email at podcast@techstringy.com. If you don't want to subscribe to the show, then subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'd be one way of getting it. And of course, you can find it in all the usual good homes of podcasts, including SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So until next time, thanks for listening and watching.